Hello, and welcome to the Gemma Movie Recap. In today's recap, we're diving into the 2022 action thriller film Hunt. The movie is about the international unit and the domestic unit of the Korean spy agency are tasked with the mission of uncovering a North Korean spy known as Dong-lim, who is deeply embedded within their agency. But before we delve into the details, please show your support for our channel by subscribing and hitting the bell icon to stay updated. Let's get started. In Washington in 1983, a group of protesters were in front of the Grand Hotel, demanding for the South Korean president to be removed from his position and sent to trial for being a dictator. There's a whole operation going on to protect the president from any dangers, led by the head of the Foreign Intelligence Unit Pyong-ho and the head of the Domestic Intelligence Unit Jung Jung-do. But they can't break the protest because they don't have permission. Reporter Kang is also trying to get an interview, so Pyong-ho's assistant Ju Kung takes him away to keep him distracted. Meanwhile, Director of Intelligence On is having a meeting with the East Asia CIA director, who blames the South Korean president for the mess outside, but On defends his leader because he's amending the constitution. At that moment, the CIA agents receive some intel revealing the presence of a sniper waiting to kill the president, hiding in the theater across the street. The car with the president is immediately stopped and the agents enter the theater to go after the sniper, who is already running away. A chase begins through the theater and both sides open fire, which causes the loss of many agents. Pyong-ho also gets hurt when the sniper throws a grenade, but it isn't enough to stop him, so he goes after the sniper and jumps on him to fight him, only to end up as the sniper's hostage. Pyong-ho wants the other agents to catch the man alive, but Jung-do comes forward and kills the sniper, blaming this result on Pyong-ho for getting caught. In South Korea, the streets are taken over by protesters as well, and when the police try to stop them, they use tear gas and violence. The protesters try to hide in nearby buildings and most people begin locking their doors, but Pyong-ho's protege Jung wants to help and opens the gate so people can enter. Unfortunately, the plan doesn't work and everyone ends up arrested anyway. When Pyong-ho comes home and hears about what happened, he calls the police station and uses his power to get Yu Jung free. Then he goes to pick her up only to discover she's bringing a bunch of young protesters with her to feed them. Pyong-ho disapproves of the company she keeps, but since Yu Jung doesn't care, Pyong-ho leaves her money for her expenses and leaves with a huff. The next day, Director On calls Pyong-ho and Jung-do to share the next mission. The president is angry because they couldn't find out who was behind the incident, so now they need to work together and get answers. The main suspect is Professor Shin from the Washington delegation, who they believe to be Dong-lim, the leader of a North Korean espionage cell. Then, On shows them the president's itinerary for his Japan visit, and both agents must sign off on it. Afterward, Jung-do interrogates Professor Shin using extreme violence, but Shin swears he isn't any kind of spy. Meanwhile, a mysterious man on a bicycle picks up a shirt from a laundry shop and uses a special code to read the information stitched on the seams. This is the way the real Dong-lim has been secretly sending intel from inside the house. In the evening, Jung-do invites Pyong-ho to have dinner at his apartment. And things get awkward when Pyong-ho's wife says she thinks they are close friends when actually they'd barely stand each other. In fact, Jung-do interrogated Pyong-ho so harshly in a past mission that Pyong-ho's hand couldn't move for a long while. Later, Pyong-ho gets an urgent call with important information. The North and Japan are having unofficial talks on colonial reparations, and a high-ranking official known as Professor Pyo wants to defect. The prize would be a nuclear reactor blueprint, R&D files, and a list of researchers. Pyong-ho immediately sends orders to find the man before Japan or Dong-lim does. Sometime later, the agents get in contact with Pyo, who asks for protection for him and his family in exchange for information on the real Dong-lim. At first, he doesn't want to share over the phone because he knows Dong-lim works as a mole in the agency, but then he decides to offer a little information to prove himself. Spec Ops 417 will infiltrate the North to gather nuclear intel. The agents try to stop their units from going there, but it's too late. The information has already been filtered and the unit gets killed. This proves there truly is a mole in the agency. Later in Tokyo, the agents keep an eye on Professor Pyo, who carries a suitcase with all the information they need. They find him surrounded by North Korean intelligence agents, so Pyong-ho orders Agent Yang to keep an eye on Pyo's family while he goes after Pyo himself. Yang ignores these orders and goes after Pyo because he's under secret orders from Director On. who thinks getting information on Donglim is their top priority, and getting it will get them a promotion. While Pyong-ho rescues Pyo's family, Yang asks Pyo for information on Donglim's identity, otherwise he won't rescue him. Pyo gives the dates and locations Donglim met with some chief Lie. Now the agents just need to cross-reference that info with their flight logs. Yang allows Pyo to enter the car now, and drives away at the same time the North Korean agents see them and open fire. The enemy manages to pull Pyo out of the car and kill him. Afterward, both agencies meet in the middle of the street for a vicious gunfight. When Pyong-ho hears Yang and Pyo get caught in the scene, he kicks Pyo's family out of the van and drives back to rescue his men and take them to safety. Although Yang ends up in a coma. A few days later, Pyong-ho returns to the agency building and is scolded by Director Ahn for failing every operation. Pyong-ho snaps and reminds Ahn they lost a unit because of his bad judgment and Yang acted on contradicting orders. He also reveals he knows Ahn has been taking bribes and has proof. Ahn tries to attack Pyong-ho to shut him up, but Pyong-ho doesn't hesitate to hit him and ask him to quit or he'll go to the president with this information. In the evening, Pyong-ho finds Yu Jong hanging out with the protesters again, and he has to rescue her when the guys start a fight over politics. Pyong-ho scolds her again for the company she keeps, and Yu Jong replies it isn't any better for working for a corrupt government agency. This makes Pyong-ho remember how 3 years ago, he lost his partner during a mission when they got caught in gunfire. Before dying, the man had confessed his true mission was to take care of Yu Jong, and later during his funeral the girl showed up calling the dead agent father. Since then, Pyong-ho has been keeping an eye on Yu Jong. A few days later, a new director takes over the agency and announces special rewards for anyone who manages to get intel on North Korean spies, so they can't ruin their plans anymore. The interrogations in prison get much more violent, but Jung-do feels like they're going nowhere with this. When he returns home, he can't help having nightmares about his time in the military and the violence he was forced to spread back then. The next day, the new director talks to Jung-do and gives him permission sent by the president to interrogate agents to find the mole. Jung-do immediately starts interrogating all the agents from the Foreign Intelligence Unit because the information points in that direction, and when Pyong-ho hears about it, he shows up to stop it. He trusts all these men and refuses to have his unit treated like this. This triggers an argument between him and Jung-do that is suddenly interrupted by urgent news. A North Korean fighter jet has entered South Korean airspace. The pilot is captured without much trouble, although they're shocked to hear this man knew all about their missile and air defense systems. He's taken to the agency, where after lots of babbling and complaining about the government to the point of taking out his gun, the pilot finally shows them Russia's newest cipher, which they've been using to pass information in secret. If they use this code, they'll be able to reel the mole in. The director puts up 48-hour code 3 to capture the mole, and just in case, Pyong-ho orders his men to make sure any new piece of intel passes through him first. With the whole agency working on the code, the information they get from it is very useful, and they manage to find secret weapons storage. Ju-kyun brings Pyong-ho some intel about a mishap case of a large amount of money that never got delivered by the police department. Jung-do tried to send the suspect to Pyong-ho's unit, and he never arrived. The money was supposed to go to a military supply contractor called Jupiter Corp. While the information about the president's next trip reaches the wrong hands even if it was supposed to be top secret. Ju-kyun visits Jupiter Corp to look for clues, and the agency continues to work on the code, finding information on a man called Bo-san, who is the person in charge on picking up the shirts with the coded stitches. Jung-do and his men follow Bo-san into the laundry shop to try to ambush him, but Bo-san knows they're there and another gunfight begins. Finding himself surrounded, Bo-san throws a grenade to make the building explode and escapes in secret. Then he meets with a woman to give her an envelope with the president's itinerary. Afterward, this woman sends this information to North Korea using a different code. Sometime later, Ju-kyung informs Pyong-ho that Jupiter's military transactions went up by 600% in 2 years and Jung-do is closely involved with the organization. To make matters worse, Jung-do's investigation of the mole is expanding and he'll want to interrogate Pyong-ho soon. For now, Pyong-ho concentrates on Jupiter, and he takes his men to raid the company for misappropriating money and confirms the CEO is an old army friend of Jung-do's. Speaking of Jung-do, he's informed that the Japan summit is cancelled because of the laundry incident, but the president's Asia tour will proceed. If the enemy knew about the Japan summit, it's because the mole is a very high-ranking officer, and when Jung-do hears Pyong-ho has been digging out dirt on him, he sends some of his men to put 24/7 surveillance on him. Sometime later, when the enemy gets to hear that the president's Japan summit has been cancelled, Pyong-ho meets with Lee Jung for dinner because she wants to ask him for a favor. Some of her freedom fighter friends are in prison, and she wants him to use his power to free them. Pyong-ho hates that he was called for this and leaves without helping the girl, leaving Lee Jung alone and open for Jung-do's men to arrest her. In the agency, Jung-do and his men interrogate Lee Jung with the usual violence and keep bringing up the fact that Lee Jung is a North Korean who entered the South under a new name. There are pictures of her near a North Korean Labor Party's special facility where they train spies like Bo-san, and there's no proof that the dead agent was her father. The interrogation is suddenly interrupted by Pyong-ho, who is furious over being investigated and having his protege captured. So Jung-do responds by presenting the pictures with the evidence. Seeing himself cornered, Pyong-ho pretends to be mad at Lee Jung for lying to him. But when he turns around, he tells the girl to play along until he finds a way to rescue her. On his way out, Pyong-ho sees how badly they're hurting a man for information and beats up the agent in frustration. Sometime later, Agent Yang finally wakes up mentioning Donglim met with Chief Lee, and Jung-do immediately sends him to a new room with stronger security. Pyong-ho's and Jung-do's teams run to see who gets there first, and while they fight in the corridors, a sniper kills Yang in his sleep. The agents hear the shots and open fire on the sniper, but the man manages to run away with no trouble. Yang's daughter chooses that moment to come to see her dad and passes out when she sees the body. During Yang's funeral, Jung-do learns this Chief Lee Yang mentioned is head of the strategic unit at North Korea's Labor Party 35, and they have their flight logs, so they just need to compare them to the flight logs of their agents to find the mole. Chu Kyung informs Pyong-ho that former Director On was pushed out for not supporting the president's coup, but Jupiter funds were funneled to him, and now he's under house arrest. The only visitor he's had so far is Jung-do. Later, the new director tells Pyong-ho and Jung-do to hurry up and wrap up their investigations before the president leaves on tour, or there'll be consequences. When they leave the director's office, the agents begin arguing over the suspicions they have of each other. Jung-do thinks Pyong-ho is Donglim, and Pyong-ho thinks Jung-do is a spy funder. They end up in a fistfight that makes them roll down the stairs. They only cut it off because people are watching. Afterward, Jung-do has to deal with the surfacing memories of what he did as a soldier in the army, brought back up because everyone keeps mentioning his army buddy from Jupiter. That massacre had been ordered by the current president. Later, Jung-do meets with the East Asia CIA director, who wants Jung-do to drop his investigation and move to the USA because they already know about Operation Hunt Peter. Meanwhile, Chu Kyung takes the new intel to Pyong-ho's house, unaware that Jang, one of Jung-do's men, is still following her. Chu Kyung has put her hands on some recordings of Jung-do's conversations with Director On that revealed he has been working with Jupiter to start a revolution because he hates the president for what he made the army do and the suffering he's putting people through. Operation Hunt Peter is the mission to kill the president. Jung-do has been behind it all along. However, Chu Kyung is still confused because Jung-do's travel logs don't match the mole's. So she double-checks the logs and is shocked to discover that the mole known as Donglim is Pyong-ho. Now that she knows the truth, Pyong-ho goes after her, managing to finish her off after she fails a few shots. Then Pyong-ho uses a special phone to get in contact with his informants. Back to Jung-do, he turns down the CIA director's offer, refusing to support a president who kills even little children. On his way out of the restaurant, he gets a call from Jang confirming Pyong-ho's indeed Donglim and that he's killed Chu Kyung. Now he's driving away to have a secret meeting. Jung-do orders his agent to follow him until he can send backup. Moments later, Pyong-ho meets with an informant and hands him the president's revised itinerary. Once the meeting is over and Pyong-ho leaves, Jang follows him, but before he can arrest him, the two of them are ambushed and knocked out by a group of mysterious men. When Pyong-ho wakes up, he thinks he's been captured by Jung-do's men because they keep hurting him for information. But after they kill Jang to make him talk, he discovers these are people working with the head of the North Korean Armed Forces Ministry, including Bo-san and the woman who sent the messages. It turns out Pyong-ho had been working with a group that wanted a peaceful revolution, but there had been some internal disputes, and now the people in charge want an all-out war. Pyong-ho's new mission is to stay with the president during his tour to open the possibility for their snipers to kill him. But Pyong-ho refuses, not wanting to bring war and misery to his country. The woman beats Pyong-ho up for disobeying and is about to kill him when suddenly Jung-do and his men crash a car into the room and open fire on the enemy. Saving Pyong-ho just in time. Before dying, the woman begins burning the papers. And when Jung-do comes closer to try to save them, he discovers that Pyong-ho as Donglim has been vouching for a peaceful revolution. In the end, they both want the same thing, for their people to stop suffering. So to Pyong-ho's shock, Jung-do burns the paper instead of saving them. He announces to his men that Jang was Donglim, and now he's dead. In exchange, he asks Pyong-ho to help him rescue the men arrested at Jupiter. Moments later, Jung-do goes to see his army friend while he's being violently interrogated and pretends he's there to ask some questions as well. But he understands that his friend's answers are telling him in code that he wants to end things for himself. Jung-do respects his wishes, and using the electrocution method, he kills him while pretending he's trying to make him talk. Afterward, Jung-do meets with his other friends from the army who were involved in Operation Hunt Peter and tells them they'll leave the killing of the president in the hands of North Korea. The group doesn't like having to work with them, but Jung-do reminds them that they have to do what's necessary to stop more people from suffering. Meanwhile, Pyong-ho finally gets to free Yu Jong and gives her some money so she can escape to the south, where she should be safe while waiting for him. A few days later in Bangkok, North Korean soldiers are getting ready to invade. Pyong-ho and Jung-do join the presidential entourage. Pyong-ho is worried about the war that will come after killing the president, but Jung-do reminds him that peace has never achieved change. Suddenly, a car approaches with an ambassador in it, so the agents have to run and stop it from entering with too much fanfare, or the snipers will think this is the president and kill the wrong person. A moment later, when the president is finally about to arrive, reporter Kang approaches Pyong-ho to congratulate him on a job well done, revealing he's a North Korean spy. Pyong-ho steals a weapon from a guard and shoots Kang on the spot. Then he realizes how far North Korea is willing to go and decides to run outside to stop the president's car, telling everyone there are snipers in the trees. As Pyong-ho and the other soldiers start a gunfight against the North Korean team, the new director tries to order Jung-do to protect the president, but Jung-do responds by killing him. Then he tries to go after the president, but the protected glass stops his shots, and when he finally manages to break it, Pyong-ho pushes him away. The president's car takes off and Jung-do tries to follow it. There's also a soldier who lands on top of the president's vehicle, but Pyong-ho shoots him before he can do anything. Jung-do crashes his car against the president's to make it stop, and then drags the man out of it to kill him in front of everyone. Before he can pull the trigger though, Kang reveals he's still alive and activates a bomb he brought with him, making the whole area explode. Pyong-ho is unconscious for a few seconds, and when he wakes up, he discovers the president is fine and being taken away. He can also hear Jung-do calling for him, and when he goes to check, he finds him with a huge wound on his chest. Pyong-ho tries to cover the wound with his hands, but Jung-do still dies after wondering why Pyong-ho ruined the operation. When Pyong-ho returns to Korea, he orders his men to release Jung-do's family, who had been arrested for being under suspicion of helping Jung-do. Pyong-ho also sends the wife Jung-do's military tags and has to watch her have a breakdown as she understands what they mean. Afterward, Pyong-ho travels to the south to reunite with Yu Jong, who pulls out a gun on him because Jung-do had been right. She had been a spy all along. Yu Jong doesn't dare to pull the trigger on the man who took care of her though, thus another spy has to come and finish the job for her. When Yu Jong comes closer to say goodbye, Pyong-ho hands her a new passport before dying, so she can get away and have a better life. Yu Jong opens the passport and starts crying when she notices Pyong-ho gave her his last name. Share your thoughts on the movie in the comments below. Remember to give it a thumbs up, support the channel by subscribing, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our future recaps. If you have any movie you'd like us to recap, feel free to mention it in the comments. Until next time.